Good morning to the audience in Brazil. Good afternoon to those in Indian time zone. The second day of India-Brazil webinar, Sustainable Mobility Ethanol Talks 2 is starting now.
Today, we'll host the last three thematic panels. Experts from both countries will discuss ethanol industrial production, its logistics for storage and distribution, and the next steps to fully develop the ethanol economy in India.
Ethanol Talks 2 is organized by the government of Brazil, the Society of Indian Automobile Manufacturers, SIAM, the Brazilian Sugarcane Industry Association, UNICA, and Brazil's Ethanol Cluster, APLA.
Let's start with our third panel discussion on ethanol industrial production. The panelists are Professor K.A. Subramanian from the Department of Energy Science and Engineering, IIT Delhi, Mr. Avinash Verma, Director General of Indian Sugar Mills Association, Mr. Flávio Castellari, Executive Director of Brazilian Ethanol Cluster, and Mr. Shashir Shashpura, Managing Director and CEO of Praj Industries. This panel will be moderated by Dr. Sangeeta Kasturi, scientist from the Department of Biotechnology, Ministry of Science and Technology, Government of India. Dr. Kasturi, please, the floor is all yours.
With history going back more than 500 years, sugarcane is one of the symbols of the Brazilian agribusiness revolution, being able to align production and sustainability in a unique way. Production efficiency begins in the lab, with research about new, more resilient, and more productive varieties of sugarcane. In our cane fields, farming is high-tech, from planting to the harvest. With precision technology, we monitor areas that will be harvested, machinery, and weather. For over a decade, virtually all the sugarcane used for the ethanol and sugar in Brazil has been harvested mechanically, resulting in improved production and labor conditions in the fields. In the mills, real-time production monitoring ensures quality and efficiency. And most importantly, with sustainability and environmental protection. In Brazil, sugarcane plantations are located far away from key ecosystems such as the Amazon. More than 2,000 kilometers separate them, equivalent to the distance from Wolfsburg to Madrid, for example. We are one of the industrial sectors that invests the most in native forest restoration projects. And under the National Biofuel Policy, Renovabio, there is zero use of deforested areas. We are becoming more and more sustainable. When we think about the present and future of sustainable mobility, ethanol is one of the real solutions. With low carbon intensity, our green fuel represents a sigh of relief in terms of the quality of life in large Brazilian cities, and an answer to the greatest global concerns. Within a circular economy, where everything in the sugarcane is taken advantage of, we use byproducts of ethanol production to fertilize crops and to produce bioelectricity and biogas. Every year, we generate enough electricity to supply more than 12 million households, with great potential for growth. By combining technology and sustainability, we continue to produce renewable energy and food, from Brazil to the world.
Thank you. That was very interesting video and very informative. So good afternoon and good morning to all the members, and I'm very much delighted to be part of this today's session, panel discussion especially, and very happy to be with the eminent speakers who have a vast experience in the ethanol production as well as ethanol R&D and second generation and expertise from the academia as well as industries. With brief introduction, I would just like to say about our department. I belong to the Department of Biotechnology, which promotes the innovations and R&D for the advanced biofuels being from Ministry of Science and Technology. And also not only the national projects, we are also looking at the international collaboration, how we can strengthen this collaboration in clean energies through mission innovation programs, and bioenergy, sustainable biofuels, one of the key initiative and that we need to promote. And this goes along with the India's missions on the Atmanirbhar Bharat, that is self-reliant, and the how we can reduce the energy dependency. So this goes, and Brazil, when we talk about Brazil's experience is well known, and in the biofuel it is more prominent, and we have many things to learn, best practices, how Brazil has put the bio-based bioeconomy, and India also has a good favorable policy in the biofuel. But as we know that energy demand in India is rising due to expanding economy, growing population and increasing urbanization. And India almost imports 85% of the oil requirement. And despite the setback, temporary setback due to COVID pandemic, the Indian economy is also expected steadily to grow steadily. Our national biofuel policy, which was framed 2018, which gives indicated target about 20% blending by 2030. However, considering the growth and demand, now it has been advanced to reach this 20% by 2025. So some of the speakers will definitely, I'm sure they will talk about these things. So I don't want to talk about much on these things, but see that currently the average 5% blending is going across the country, and we are expecting that they will reach about 10% by 2020. The roadmap has been drawn for, in order to, the bioenergy roadmap has been laid down by Government of India, which says that we need to have by 2025-26, the E20 should be done with the, that is E20 blending of 20% in by 2025%. There are some challenges definitely, and but however, due to availability of larger arable land, rising production of food grains and sugarcane, then we do have suitable technologies for converting the sugar to ethanol. So hence it is possible to increase the production of ethanol from various food grains as well as sugar syrup and all those things. And their policies also make it open, include the food grains as well as the sugar juice and all those things, sugars. Surplus sugar is available, but now the challenges are again with respect to sustainability. So we need to decide on important to have feedstock sustainability. We know that some of the crops like paddy as well as sugarcane, they consume a lot of irrigation water, almost 70% water is consumed. So we need to consider how we have to grow this sustainability, therefore plays very important role. And also biotechnology plays important role. So we have developed few varieties which also can consume less water, for example, biomass, which are biomass, high biomass, sorghum, etc. And also some drought resistant varieties which can consume less water and can grow in semi-arid areas. So we need to move on to some alternate and sustainable feeds like maize and 2G ethanol. Where for 2G ethanol, if we talk about 2G ethanol, there are again challenges on technological and also cost economics and all those things. So those need to be addressed. I am very aware that we have Mr. Joshipura who will be speaking about, and Subramaniam. So they will talk about the challenges and how these are addressing. So without taking much time, I now I would like to request all members that if you can go for the interactive session. So some of the questions basically 2 questions we are going to have. What are the technological solutions and how we can have best practices in order to continuous improving the sugar and ethanol production? So for this, I would like to invite the first speaker who has Mr. Flavo, who has a very good expertise in industries as well as the bringing structure. Mr. Flavo Catalyzer, who holds, I would like to my apologies if I'm not correctly spelling the Castellari. Is it that okay?
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
Yes,
yeah, that's right.
Who has expertise in business administration and has been executive director of Brazil Ethanol Cluster. He's already almost worked for more than a decade, about 13-14 years, and he has also experience in bringing 13x experience, but bringing together the industries with joint project of APLA and APEX, the Brazilian Trade and Investment Promotion Agencies. So I would like to ask you how, because Brazil, you know that they have been doing wonderful. So what is your experience further improving this production and how we can improve efficiency. So you please, I would request you to share your experience, please, Flavio. Over to you, Mr. Flavio.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sanjit. It's a pleasure to be in here. It's an honor to organize together this webinar with the Brazilian government, CIAN and UNICA. And the idea is to explain to you a little bit, to all, how the evolution of our sugar industry, and we separate in two parts. We separate in an industry that provide technology and machines and equipments, and we will show how the sugar mills evolved in Brazil in the past 40 years since we started the ethanol program here in Brazil. And I'm very glad to see that India is joining us in this effort to promote and use biofuels, especially ethanol. And this will be a great joint effort between Brazil and India to promote more and more this kind of energy transition. So I would like to ask to the technical people to share my first slide, please, just to add some numbers, and then I can try to explain. I cannot see my presentation. I will open it here. Sorry. Let me see if I can open it here.
You can see it.
Everybody seeing? That's
Yes.
Okay. For me, it was very small in here, but the idea is to just to give some numbers and show how we can contribute with the challenge that India will face during these next years to implement this program in India. And if you look at when we started our ethanol program in 1975, in the beginning of Proalco, with the same capacity of equipment, we are milling 5.5 thousand tons a day, and today we can use the same equipment and milling 15,000. If you look at the fermentation time, we need 24 hours just to end the process, and nowadays we can do that in 6.8. So this brings a lot of efficiency to our industry and help us to achieve doing more with less, So this was the contribute of the industry to our sector. Now I would like to ask you for share our second one. Slide, please. And this the evolution of our sugar industry. If you think over about Brazil in 1975, our sugar mill were just producing sugar. And nowadays, if you look at this slide, you can see that diversification in our sugar industry is a key for the sustainability of our industry. So when we decided to move and change our point of view, our mindset, to be only a sugar producers and start thinking about bioenergy producers. So this changed a lot our industry in Brazil. And about the changing that, thank you. You can take it off my slide now. Thank you very much. So if you think it over about the evolution in the past 50 years, we faced two challenges. The first one, the beginning of Proalco, then we need install and have more production of ethanol to fuel the market that was created about the ethanol program. We have the second jump when we decide and we evolve the flex fuel cars, the technology for the cars. So when we decided to jump again, we need to add more technology. And today, if you look our sugar industry, we produce an ethanol with molasses and the sugarcane juice. So our distillery are flex, so you can use each one of feedstock and at the same time in the same factory. So this is bring a lot of efficiency for us. And also, as Dr. Sanjita say, we are looking for new new feedstocks. Like we decided 5 years ago to start maize ethanol in Brazil. And today, maize ethanol in Brazil represents more or less 10% of our production. So I think India is going in a right track. So that's the numbers that I want to add and say that Brazil is willing to help and to join effort with India to achieve this goal and this challenge that you will face in the next 5 or 10 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Flavio. So you have touched upon very important aspect. First of all, thank you how this evolution happened and journey of the ethanol and how efficiencies have been improved with respect to production and the yields, etc. And also it's very important, as you have mentioned, how we can bring more by using less. So that's the only sustainability aspect. So it's important, and thank you. So I'll come back to you again about the diversification and those things. But before that, I would like to invite the speaker, Mr. Abhinash Verma here, who is Director General of Indian Sugar Mills Association, ISMA, who has the successful 7 years working directly in the sugar and ethanol producing industries. And he has also 21 years of experience as a senior level bureaucrat in Government of India, skilled in negotiations and business planning, management, etc. And he has got master's degree focused in economics from JNU, Jawaharlal Nehru, which is the very prominent university. So without taking much time, because his experience shows that he has a vast experience with dealing with the industries as well as government. So I would like to hear your perspective, Mr. Abhinash. So what is the journey you have been seen in the India for over the 20 years, 25 years, and how we can take it forward, because we have ambitious targets, and also that ethanol would contribute to our economy, and how we can also think of further value addition with respect to, so your perspectives we would like to hear. Over to you, Mr. Abhinash.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much for the introduction, ma'am. You correctly pointed out that I've been associated with the ethanol sector now for almost about since 2007. So almost 14 years I've been handling this from the government and now from the industry. So we would say that the ethanol program in India started in 2003, but the real push started from 2007. But from 2007 to about 2015, it was kind of off and on, and we were about at 1% or 1.5% of ethanol blending with petrol. The real push or the real offtake, I would say that the ethanol sector took off was from 2015, when the Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, very clearly said that we need to have a lot of emphasis on this sector, and he introduced the policy of a fixed ethanol pricing policy, then multiple prices depending on the feedstock, depending on the cost of production, and that really helped the industry grow. The current government also gave a lot of incentives to set up ethanol production capacities, because we had enough sugar cane in the country. We had so much of sugar cane that we were unable to find a buyer for the sugar that we were producing, and we had to offload into the international market, causing a lot of inconvenience to my friends in Brazil. So then the government said that why don't you convert all that into ethanol? The challenge was we didn't have enough production capacities to convert that surplus sugarcane or the sugar-rich molasses into ethanol. So the government said, okay, we will handhold you, we will give you some support, we will give you some concessional loans, bank loans, and we will also try and ensure that you have enough demand from the oil companies. And that is when the investors in the sugar industry started investing quite heavily. So from about 1.5% or 1% of blending in about 2015, today we are, last 2 years, we did about 5% ethanol blending with gasoline in India. And in the current season, we expect, or the season which is going to get over on 30th November, we expect that we should be doing almost about 7.5 to 8% of the ethanol blending and supplying almost about 3 billion liters for the ethanol blending program. Next year's tender has been floated by the oil companies, and we have submitted bids for almost about 4.14 billion liters of ethanol supplies in the next year, there will be subsequent tenders. And therefore, the target that the government has given us that we should be blending about 10% ethanol with gasoline in 2022-23, we should, 21-22, we should be there. I mean, considering the way the investments are happening in the ethanol sector, in the ethanol production capacities, both in the sugar industry and now the young growing sector, that is the grain-based or the corn-based ethanol, they're also growing. They're all put together, they are still at a very nascent stage, I would say. Out of almost about 4.14 billion liters, the contribution from the grain sector or the corn sector would be about 0.65 billion liters, so slightly less than a billion liters there, but they're still growing. We see that in the next couple of years, we will have enough production capacity in the sugar sector to divert all that surplus sugar that we are continuously producing, almost about 6 million tons to 7 million tons of sugar every year. In the current year, we expect to divert about 3 to 3.5 million tons of sugar into ethanol, reducing that surplus from about 6.5 million tons to about 3 million tons, which we are trying to export in the international market. But as we grow in the capacity over the next 3-4 years, we should be able to divert all that surplus into ethanol and not really look at the export market. And that is what is the intention of the industry. That is what is the intention of the government of India. Now, what do we need from there? I mean, we also now know that the grain-based sector is being highly encouraged by the government. They are also being incentivized, and they are also growing slowly and slowly, and will be contributing more and more towards this ethanol program in the years to come, so that by 2025, we are able to achieve that 20% ethanol with gasoline blending target by 2025 in the next 4 years. So number one, personally, I would say, and the industry believes that we are on way to develop enough capacities to be able to supply that 10 billion liters of ethanol by 2025 for that 20% ethanol blending with gasoline by 2025. Now, what is the next step that we are looking at as investors, as producers? Is that there should be adequate demand. There should be adequate offtake by the oil companies. Currently, we are blending at 10%. The government has announced, the Honorable Prime Minister on the 5th of June 2021, World Environment Day, said that by April 2023 onwards, all new two-wheelers and four-wheelers would be E20 compliant in the country. But if you really look at the replacement of the vehicles every year, about 8 or 9% of the vehicles are replaced every year. So by 2025, you will have almost about 25% of the vehicles on the road which would be E20 compliant. And the rest would still be E10 compliant or E12 or E13 compliant. Still, we are not at 20% ethanol blending with gasoline, and therefore we need that extra demand. And where does that extra demand come from to achieve that 20% target? The extra demand will come from the flex fuel vehicles, because if you have enough flex fuel vehicles in the country, they straight away take almost 4 to 5 times more ethanol as compared to an E20 vehicle, because they can run at 100% gasoline or a combination of gasoline, or 100% ethanol or a combination of ethanol or gasoline. And that is what we are looking forward to. We are, as I said, we are on way to develop enough capacities to produce that 10 billion liters, but at the same time, we should be assured, we should be comfortable, and there should be some kind of a method to ensure that by 2025, the auto sector or the automobile sector are in such a position that there is enough demand to take that 10 billion liters of ethanol from us for blending with petrol. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Avinash Verma. You have very excellently talked about how the India is an industry is increasing the capacities, production capacities, and to meet the target. And also there is a larger interest and investment coming, growing, and as per the policies. And with the target of 20% blending 2022, you have already roadmap is there, and industry is also geared up for that. And you have also raised very important question about the engine, how vehicles are compliant for the E20. That's very important, and we have very good relevant expert, Dr. K. Subramaniam is here with you. He is one of the panelists who is the currently head of Department of Energy Sciences and Engineering at IIT Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi. He is also a former head of Center for Energy Sciences for a couple of years. And after completing his PhD from IIT Madras, he has worked as a scientist in Indian Institute of Petroleum, which is Dehradun, which is the main institute of petroleum industry. And his main research areas include hydrogen energy, alternate fuel, internal combustion engine vehicles, and hydrogen backfire and combustion, etc. So hydrogen fuel and oxygen combustion biofuels also, these are the engine part and zero emission vehicles. So this is very important aspect. So with this, I would, with this brief introduction, because it's very difficult to express in these words in very less time, but it's very important to know your perspectives about how these vehicles will be ready, because now you know that industry is ready, we do have policy. So what are your views on the engines and vehicles which are 820 compliant with respect to ethanol, which is the focus of this today's talk? So I would like to invite your perspectives on specifically on this particular topic. Yes, over to you, Dr. Subramanian.
Yeah, thank you very much, madam, for your introduction. And good afternoon to all, and good morning to our Brazilian partners. Before starting that, I will tell that we are doing one BRICS project. BRICS. So we are doing already one project with the Brazil of biofuels, and Professor Electro from Federal University of Ituba. So we are a strong partner in this way. Now the ethanol, before going to E20, ethanol 20% in gasoline. So ethanol is very important in this country for energy security and carbon neutral. And where we are standing ethanol in this country, E5, 5% blended ethanol in gasoline implemented the year 2003. Now today we are 10% blending of ethanol in gasoline available entire country. The next step, we are moving forward 20% ethanol to be blended in gasoline. See, ethanol is a octane booster. You can say ethanol very much required for gasoline engine because it's a higher octane number. One of the fuel quality requirement of any gasoline is increasing the octane number. So if you blending ethanol, whatever level, your octane number will increase. If octane number will increase, then your fuel economy of the vehicle will increase. Of course, you will do some modification, and the CO2 emission, anyway, the carbon neutral fuel, we are not taking, even then you are considering CO2 will be lesser. So what are the modifications to be done in case of ethanol for 20%? So up to 20%, our research work with oil industries and other. Then 20%, the issues in the material compatibility. The engine point of view, you can, even we are also working towards even 100% ethanol for research point of view. And right now we are working E15, E85 and E100. But in the actual ground on the vehicle point of view, E20, most of the vehicles are compatible. Only some of the gasket, some of the intake manifolds, injector, that will be ensured the material compatibility. And most of the vehicle meeting, some vehicle may not meet. That's what Government of India is planning to implement ethanol in the year of 2025. Another 4 years has given the vehicle manufacturer can modify the engine which is compatible for E20. Some few vehicle manufacturers already designed a vehicle that is a multi-fuel compatibility, especially flexi-fuel compatibility. Compatibility, it can be either gasoline or ethanol. So that is one. And also we are making the separate, the blended fuel available in the petrol pump. That E20 compatible vehicle sticker will be pasted on the vehicle. So that is one changes. And also now, this is very important, the seminar and conference, the demand of ethanol to be increased in future, then E20 cases, in our view, not much modification needed in the vehicle, only some components level only. Engine cases, once inducted ethanol inside the engine, during combustion, not a problem at all. So then even your engine can capable even increasing further ethanol, even beyond 20. So this is one, and also most of the vehicle will, and small some problem will be there, power drop, everything. That is a minor problem that can be sorted out. The emission point of view, carbon monoxide, hydrocarbons, all very less. And if a dedicated vehicle is coming after 4 years, slightly modify the engine technology, then your fuel economy of the vehicle will increase. The customer will get benefit. Right. Further step, we are now talking on beyond E20. E20, next step will be E85 and E100. That is under discussion stage. A lot of inputs coming from OEM. And what we are saying that instead of going E30, E40, then because again modification do every time. E20 means, okay, up to E20, whenever the vehicle will be compatible, even no modification. But beyond that, yes, vehicle to be modified. So we are suggesting that instead of going E30, E40, let them jump to E85 and E100. Why E85? 15% gasoline should be mandatory for cold startability of the vehicle and engine. Engine at the colder environment to be started needs some gasoline, or again modify the engine technology is possible, 100% ethanol in the engine. In this case, lot of demand of ethanol need, and the supply chain will be improved, or the supply and production side also will be lot of growth to be happen in another decades. As per Nitya, the electric vehicle is going on. Another one is ethanol fueled vehicle is another target. So 2030, we are expecting lot of boost, jump, ethanol fueled vehicle to be on the ground. It is very important to achieve net zero emission by 2050 or 2070. And the automotive sector is very vulnerable because we are importing almost 85% crude oil. We have to find the alternative. So far, best alternative we found it ethanol. With this word, I will finish my thing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Subramaniam. Yes, this was very important aspects you have very nicely explained. As he has mentioned, this currently he says that all the vehicles, they are comfortable. They don't need any changes, modifications are not required if you have to go for 20%. So without any modifications, they can go. However, with some further modifications and improvement in the engine, the fuel economy can be increased. So that's very important thought you have given. And also it is there some research work is going on for the E85 and E100. So I think by the 2025, as there are some concerns, so we feel that we should be comfortable. The engine manufacturers will be ready for the E20 compliant of these needs come to, and so that there would be definitely boost, and supply chain for the engines and all vehicles would be on the road, which will have label which can go for the E20. So that's important. Thank you for sharing your perspectives. Now, I would like to move, because now we have talked about the 1G ethanol, and we know that there has been a lot of increase in demand and as well as the increasing supply for the 1G ethanol. However, in order to go for the sustainable fuels, that is sustainable ethanol, we also need to look for the sustainability of biomass, feedstock, because there is a lot of competition, and also diversification of sugar or many furthermore improvement and value addition to ethanol, that is also required. And we have very good expert. I think the Praj industry, it's known that Praj industry has done very well in the ethanol sector, not only in India, but across the globe. And I would welcome Mr. Joshipura is here, who is CEO of Raj Industries, which is a company of global footprint in the bioenergy space, encompassing both in 1G as well as 2G technologies for ethanol production. They have also, with this technology, there also government has set up a couple of plants there for 2G ethanol. And without saying much, before we would like to listen your thoughts on the advanced biofuels and 2G ethanol specifically, and then also mention about what are the challenges and how these are being addressed as technological challenges, how Praj is going to address, have addressed already, and is going to address the future challenges. So over to you, Mr. Joshipura, please. Unmute yourself, Mr. Joshipura.
Yes, sir. So good morning and good afternoon to my colleagues on the panel and other attendees to this seminar. As Dr. Kasturi, you said that sugary and starchy feedstocks and the 1G ethanol obviously have a very definitive role to play in the overall bioeconomy, and we can see an increasing role for the cellulosic biomass as well, and that is where the second generation ethanol technology steps in. We need to, so let me share the background. In India, we are currently building 3 second generation bio refineries, one for each of the large oil marketing companies, which are Fortune 500 companies, based on rice straw as feedstock. And we expect that starting some Q2, end of Q2 of next calendar year, we'll start commissioning one at every 6 month kind of a period. So we'll have 3 plants commissioned by the time we reach summer of 23. What's important to understand is that the cellulosic biomass by itself is a complex feedstock to handle, and it has taken and several companies in the world have actually invested time, effort, and money to develop the technology around this. What's very important is, as you rightly put, and I think the whole world is right now focused on, is the fact that we all want to make sure that we go to a net zero or less carbon intensive economics. And for that, I think cellulosic ethanol has a very, very large role to play, because we can see a reduction in excess of 85% compared to conventional fuels if we go to the cellulosic ethanol route. Given that strong value proposition, apart from the fact that, of course, you produce ethanol, which is same as any 1G ethanol as well, what's happening in the space is a very clearly that the big challenge in front of the 2G technology today is how does it become commercially viable? And there are several steps that are required to be taken. One is, of course, on the technology side, where a continuous effort is required to drive down the capital cost as well as the operating cost. And I can share with you that over the last 3 years, we've been able to drive down the capital cost by a margin of almost 30% and operating cost also by a margin of 30%. Compared to where 3 years ago, we are already at a 30% lower level, but we need to continuously work on same to further improve its viability. The second point is about how do we go about creating very specific blending mandates for the 2G ethanol, because as we are right now witnessing, the European Union has taken a lead, and under the RED II directive, they have now mandated that as they move forward to 2030, they would like almost 7.5% of the blending to happen through the 2G ethanol. So, and only all incremental blending will come through the 2G ethanol route. The third dimension, therefore, is blending mandate. We have talked about carbon intensity reduction, and that it also leads itself to saying what kind of a taxation regime we should have. Today, we pay no value for high carbon versus a low carbon intensity operation. It's the same value that gets perceived, and I think that is where things will change as we move forward, because in order to move the society to a low carbon intensity regime, we will have to tax products differently. And as was being earlier mentioned, if we have a E100, then that needs to get taxed differently than E85, then E20, and then no blending at all. And I think those needs to be the drivers for changing the people's preferences. I'm sure the technology will keep pace. Brazil has already shown the way. that it is possible to run automobiles on flex fuel engines. And I think that is something that we should also see. Already a lot of work is happening in that direction. One other area where a lot of work is underway and some successes are also visible is the development of co-products out of these 2G biorefineries. Because if we can create commercially successful models for creating co-products, it is possible to improve the viability of the overall biorefinery. And as I was mentioning earlier, we have already moved in the last 3 years from a negative IRR to a positive IRR situation, from almost a minus 10-12% IRR to now a situation where we are at a positive 12% IRR. So a big journey has been undertaken, but we need to further improve this, and the work is underway. Co-products play a very, very important role. We have just announced from Praj the rollout for 2 successful commercially ready to commercialize product lines. One is biobitumen, which comes as an outcome of the lignin valorization attempt that we have undertaken in a very significant way. We all know that in 2G biomass, when we use, we'll have significant amount of lignin that will be available. In absence of a co-product, we'll use it as a fuel, but that's not required if we can find a much higher value. So bitumen or biobitumen is a very clear route out there for which we just announced. The second one, which is equally important, is lignosulfonates, which are from India's perspective very important, because today India imports this entire requirement of lignosulfonates, which are used as binding elements in concrete. When we create concrete mixtures, they are used as moisture binding elements. And I think that's something is a clear import substitute for India. The virtuosity of second generation ethanol cannot be understated, because the waste becomes wealth for farmer, because now they have a value for their straw. The local pollution that gets created, and right now many of you, those of you are in embassy in Delhi, and some of my other colleagues on the panel who are residents of Delhi are already experiencing it in terms of heavy smoke that they have to live with when the farmers burn off the residues in the field. If we use it to that extent, it substitutes imported crude oil, which means as a country we save foreign exchange, and that saved foreign exchange actually is put back in the hands and pockets of our farmers. So the wealth of the country actually goes up. We of course improve our energy security, because that is what it, and the most important, there is abundance of feedstock right now, which is completely renewable. And I think that is the most significant positive aspect. So right now, as the world is watching the 3 biorefineries that are coming up, I think from a sugar industry perspective, there is a very important biomass that could also start to play an important role as we go forward, and that is bagasse. How do we find a higher use of bagasse? Because it is now known that when you use it in thermal processes versus bioprocesses, the efficacy is almost double for bioprocesses. So we will have to find a way of using bagasse also as a feedstock. Already technology is developed and is underway to create either on a bolt-on model. Brazil already has a very successful case in Aizen, who have demonstrated that bagasse can be successfully converted to ethanol, and the technology is also available here in India with us. So we will be in a position to see bagasse moving as a feedstock apart from the sugary feedstock that we talked about in terms of juice, molasses B or C. So as we move forward, I think expanding of the feedstock base, abundance of feedstock, and all the intended benefits starting from climate change all the way to individual farmers augur well for the second generation technology. With that, I would hand it over back to Dr. Kasturi. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Shashir Joshipura. You have addressed most of the issues and challenges very nicely explained, and you have a good R&D also besides the production capacities. So very important point which you mentioned about the cost reduction. So both in terms of capital investment as well as operating costs. So this has been, there is a very important issue. So with this, if this cost competitiveness is addressed, then I think there will be no time the 2G ethanol can also come in picture, and we can all address the issues, burning issues about the reducing emissions from the biomass and utilization of base value addition to biomass, and which is indirectly making profit to the farmers. So that societal challenge also can be addressed, and many employment in the rural sector. So these are all these all these points can be included, and we can go for the sustainable development goals in considering all these areas. The another important point also you had mentioned about the co-products, development of co-products, value-added products from various byproducts, that is developing either lignosulfonates or lignin to bitumen. So these are also, and I would also like to say that besides biofuel and ethanol, we can also talk about other value-added products, because there is also demand coming for chemicals and polymers. So when today only I read in newspaper that we have surplus sugar at most 30 or 40 lakh tons sugar is available. So this may be, if we complete the demand coming from the cellulosic ethanol and all, then we can also diversify the usage of this ethanol to maybe ethanol to jet fuel, then ethanol to pack and other things. So then there are many options which are more value-added products will be coming. So there are again many industries can come, and also we can try to replace the fossil-based chemicals as well as fuels with these renewable chemicals and fuels. So very important. I am very happy that all these important factors have been discussed, and we have very interactive and good session. I hope everyone attending this seminar are happy. If there are any couple of questions, we can take up these questions from the audience. Over to you, Roberta, if you'd like to say, yes, or I can take, we can continue our discussions. Is there Renato?
Thank you.
Renato, I can say hello. Yes, in the audience.
Hello. Hello, thank you.
Hello.
Thank you, Dr.
Hello,
Kasturi.
Roberta. Yes.
On behalf of the organizers, I thank the chairperson, Dr. Kasturi, the speakers, and the audience that attended this panel on ethanol industrial production. And now we invite you to go to our fourth panel discussion, which will be on logistics for ethanol, storage, and distribution. This panel will start straight away. So thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you.
The Earth is calling for help. The battle against climate change is urgent. And we must all be part of the solution. We need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions that are causing global warming. Ethanol is one of the alternatives. Compared to gasoline, biofuels reduce CO2 emissions by up to 90%. Less emissions, more air quality. Over the past 15 years, ethanol has helped reduce pollution and brought Sao Paulo's air quality back to WHO recommended standards. Better air quality, better health. The use of ethanol reduces the risks of respiratory diseases and increases people's life expectancy. Renewably sourced products with environmental and social protection. Products that respect life. This is what we offer to the world.
Hello, we are now starting panel 4, which is titled Logistics for Ethanol, Storage and Distribution. The panel is going to last 45 minutes. As chair, we will have the distinguished participation of Mr. Harjit Singh, SIAM-2W Technical Committee and Executive Advisor of Hero Motocorp. The panel will also count with the esteemed Mr. Shantanu Gupta, Chief General Manager of Indian Oil, Mr. Paulo Neves, Vice President of Trading of Horizon, and Ms. Cristiane Olivia de Andrade, Technical Assistant of the Director General of ANP, and Mr. K.C. Sharma, Superintending Engineer for Transport of the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways of India. I would like now to give the floor for our esteemed chair, Mr. Harjit Singh.
Thank you, Carolina. Am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you. Good morning to all the Brazilian friends and good afternoon to friends from India. First of all, I would like to thank SIAM and the government of Brazil for giving this opportunity, and also a very warm welcome to all the expert panelists on this very important session on logistics for ethanol storage and distribution. Of late, India has taken up a very ambitious and aggressive plan for increasing biofuels and especially ethanol economy. India has a lot to learn from Brazil in all aspects of ethanol usage so as not to reinvent the wheel. In this series, we have a topic or a task in hand to deliberate on logistics for ethanol, storage and distribution. We heard yesterday also that our Honorable Prime Minister has launched a vision document on Environmental Day of 5th June 2021 with major highlights. Though the existing ethanol penetration across the country is around 8.5%, but we have a very ambitious plans to go for E10 by 2022 pan-India, which is around the corner, E20 to start from 2023 and go to pan-India by 2025, which has already been preponed by 5 years from 2030 to 2025. There are 3 states which are ethanol surplus producer, and there are few states which do not produce ethanol at all. Surplus states may have a flex fuel availability, and starved states need to have E10 and E20 availability plan. So it clearly shows the challenge in hand that Indian boundaries, which goes 3,200 kilometers from north to south and 2,900 kilometers from east to west, has to map ethanol producing and ethanol starving states for supply of ethanol pan-India. Hence, logistic and storage becomes most important, especially across 29 states, 7 union territories, and that 2 having their own local regulations. Should there be a backup plan in case of a storage in a local area. And it is important to have availability round the year during all weather conditions. Because Indian automobile manufacturers have a plans to modify engines hardware, like increase in compression ratio and the related changes to compensate for loss of fuel economy or a calorific value of ethanol. Hence, those engines which are modified by 25-26 will not be able to take a lower ethanol percentage. Cost is another most important criteria, as the fuel prices are important for better acceptability of ethanol blended fuel. Hence, logistic and storage becomes the most critical, keeping in mind simultaneous multiple fuel blends E10, E20, and flex fuel, which is E85. And also there is a discussion going on methanol 15 across a vast country like India, across all the seasons, including rainy season when the humidity is very high. So with this backdrop, I invite expert panelists, and first I will invite Mr. Shantanu Gupta, who is a Chief General Manager, Alternate Energy and Sustainable Development, Indian Oil Corporation. So Mr. Gupta, my brief question to you is that how do you think we plan to manage variety of ethanol blended fuel, E10, E20, E85? Should there be 7 zones, north, south, east, west, central, northeast, Himachal for ethanol supply management? Logistic cost, how to manage? To ensure consistent supply throughout the year, what are the measures we should take? Or should there be a refinery blending, keeping in mind refinery upgradation cost? So these are the few thoughts and the challenges in the Indian scenario. So over to Mr. Shantanu Gupta, please.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. It's a pleasure to be here as a part of this discussion under this august leadership of Mr. Singh and all our speaker colleagues. Thank you very much for Government of Brazil and also SIAM for selecting me to speak here. So yes, Mr. Singh, it was thank you very much for a very well narrative, briefing what you have given in the beginning. So it encapsulates all the issues together. Appreciate that. So, and as we all know, availability of product is one challenge, but reaching the product across the length and breadth of this country, huge country, with the different type of states having a different legislations and different, the access issues. Because, if you have a ethanol available in the state of UP, if you are going to do the blending at 20% in the state of Manipur or in the state of Tripura, so the challenges, because there is no local availability per se. So taking in that to considerations, yes, I will just give a little background of the story, because when I took over the whole ethanol blending program in 2003-04, when in the Government of India started first the blending of ethanol at 5%, and then we raised it to 10% with lots of trials. And from 2012-13, it went down to 0.6% blending. And 2014 onwards, the real game changeover started. And we steadily could pick up from 0.6% in 2012 to 2016-17 to the 3.5%, and 2018, truly it was 5%. The first time across the country, we achieved 5% blending. As an oil company, we used to coordinate with all oil companies, and we used to handle a huge quantity of ethanol to the tune of, if you see the total ethanol requirement was, that time it was 3 billion liters, and now it is almost, you can say that 4.5 billion liters today, to get it 10% across the country. So how the mechanism worked? Yes, Mr. Singh has told that yes, there's only 3 producing states, and definitely the logistic challenges was huge, because Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, Karnataka, these 3 are the major states who are producing ethanol, but that was from the sugar route. It's all molasses based sugar cane, and then 2018 government started sugar cane juice conversion to ethanol, first time for the country. Till such time it was only C-heavy molasses. The bottommost molasses part. And then they also agreed to give B-heavy molasses, which is rich in sugar. And then the sugar itself was totally given to the control that you can convert sugar to ethanol also, because there was some sugar glut. At the same time, it was a social responsibility of the government of India for farmers' protections, because sugar inventory was going up. So they had to divert the whole thing. And that helped to a lot to get more quantity of ethanol in the country. After that, it all started the grain, the first is damaged food grain conversion from 2019 onwards. And then 2020 onwards, another historic step government has taken, that fresh food grains, the maize and rice, which is having a very high surplus, that can also be converted to ethanol. So that has really given a clue based on which government was so much confident to reach across the country, because sugarcanes are state specific, because there are some geographical and geological conditions and weather conditions for which it becomes more easier to cultivate and go for sugarcane agriculture. But when it comes to the grain, this grain-based ethanol plant, it can come across the country. So what we did with the Ministry of Petroleum, the whole planning have been done, and then every state, wherever there is a paddy surplus, there is a maize surplus. So those states have been identified, and we have gone for an expression of interest in a large scale across the country. So if we take this, we have requirement in 2025, but E20 will be around 10 billion liters. But today we have the capacity offer from grain sources itself, it crossed 10 billion liters. And sugar is already having a 5 billion liters, which can come anytime in that. So now the question is, the quantities which have been bid in the expression of interest, coming of the physical plans is very, very essential. We have given a time of 2 years maximum. So 2 to 2.5 years time, we are expecting that the plants will start coming. Different states having a different, whatever the regulations and regulatory challenges have been taken care of. Now ethanol can move across the country, any state, because earlier days there was a restriction on IDR Act. So ethanol for transport purpose was also being considered as a edible ethanol purpose. That's a portable liquor. So there are lots of restrictions because it's an excise duty product. So duty paid now, ethanol, this is a GST product. So there should not be any control from the state. So it becomes a state subject, central subject. So, and Government of India has taken lots of efforts to have this very smooth movement of ethanol across the state. And the ethanol deficit states will have more number of grain-based ethanol, where sugar canes cannot come. And this will reduce the challenge in logistics challenges, because it will be more or less, we are looking for 250 kilometers radius. The supply will be within 250 kilometers radius. And this will be the distributed way the plants will come so that there is no risk cost, number one. Number two, the long transportation cost is saved, because today's context, because of the high transportation, 1,500 kilometers long distance it is traveling to reach the product. So those challenges will be mitigated. And finally, one very important point which is going to help here, because of we have a huge, structure and logistics of the grains, mostly the rice grain. We have Food Corporation of India's across the country, they have depots and warehouses. Then we have maize warehouses. So all those things will start. So crop diversification will start taking place. It's very important today, because everybody should not focus on rice. And this rice areas, when they are getting a better offtake of maize, then the maize growing will start. That is why in the UI we are giving more weightage to the maize-based ethanol plants. And this is the way we are trying to nurture the better agricultural revenues also. At the same time, more engagement of farmers. And in any case, ultimately, as we are an agricultural community, the basic things in our country is agrarian. So they will give a special push on socio-economic structure. So this is not only going to help reducing these emissions, reducing our dependence on fossil fuel, imports and the import and all those foreign exchange drain, but it is also helping in getting the socio-economic challenges to mitigate. And that's going to be a real game changer for this country. So that's where the model will be working, and we're very hopeful, and all the agencies are actively working on this so that we can get the supply side challenges and logistics challenges be tackled properly. In addition to that, we have tried pipeline transportations of ethanol, ethanol blended petrol. Probably for the first time in India, Indian Oil Corporations had done this from taking Mathura to Delhi by ethanol blending pipeline, 10% blended ethanol in the pipeline. So this is one very success story, and we are also expanding that logistics movement. Rail movement with pure ethanol loading in the tank wagons, that also has started. We have started in the western region, and from Pune and those areas to Karappa, all those areas we have been feeding. From Mathura to Jalandhar, Mathura to Jammu, there also we have sent ethanol blended petrol by rail. So the Northeast challenges and Jammu Kashmir challenges, which are logistically very challenging, those areas with the help of railways, this is also started. We are creating facilities to have more sort of such, transportations. And also coming back to refinery level blending, you know that octane number of ethanol is quite high. So that will also help in us for MS. If you reduce the octane, produce the octane, lower octane, and blend it and supply this. So that is one way it is going to be given. We are also working in this in a few of the refineries, this model. Mathura refinery already we have tried. Panipat also we are going to try, and Ahmedabad is a Baroda refinery also we are going to try. So this, once it is stable, it may take a couple of years time to stabilize. Then this 20% will be a baseline. What we see, it will be flex fuel and average will be more or less near to Brazil average, which is around 550 to 52%. If you see the whole overall average in that. So that is where it's excellently placed today, and to get these things to take it forward. So it's my views. I can stop here. Thank you, Mr. Singh, for this opportunity, and I hope to hear from those expert panelists here for the more on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shantanu. I must say that because I belong to an auto industry, one of the biggest concern of the auto industry before we modify the engines is a consistent supply and across the country, because the same vehicle have to have a portability going from one place to another place.
Absolutely.
And it's your words are very assuring that you are trying all kind of transportation, not only a pipeline, but road transport is already there, and even the refinery blending. Thanks a lot. I think it will definitely build a confidence among whole of the automobile manufacturing community.
Thanks a lot.
Now, next, going to the next speaker is Mr. Paulo, and from Trading Rise in Brazil. And Mr. Paulo, as I said, even if our concern is regarding storage and transportation, basically ethanol blended fuel availability at the dispensing station across the country. But the question is, should there be a backup storage plans, especially for the times of drought and poor crop, from consistent supply of ethanol blended fuel? As once the engine hardware is modified, as I just now explained, for a higher ethanol blended fuel cannot take a lower ethanol percentage. And if yes, then what are the key parameters to strategize the backup storage? And also there is a concern among the Indian makers that what are the storage safety concerns which we should take care. So over to Mr. Paulo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Singh. It's a pleasure to be joining Ethanol Talks today and having the opportunity of discussing with such important panelists today. And I'll try to address your questions and perhaps quickly touching in 4 steps, a little bit about our story in Brazil and in my view, the several similarities and opportunities that we have to share the history of the ethanol industry in our country now that stands for almost 40 years. So I would like to share some few illustrations that will help deliver the message that I would like to share with you today very quickly. I don't know if you all guys can see the screen now, but just quickly,
we can see your slide.
Just quickly about our company. We are a company that integrates the value chain in our country. So we do a fuels distribution business in Brazil, but also in Argentina and Paraguay. In our countries, blending ethanol into gasoline. The largest example for sure is Brazil. So we operate 7,000 stations in the country, all of them using E100 and E27 in our country. We are also a large sugarcane producer. As a matter of fact, the largest sugar and ethanol producer in our country. So we've been a lot involved to the questions they've been discussing in this panel around logistics and the supply chain of ethanol. So I would like to have this introduction to highlight how we are embedded and involved in this value chain for a long time now. So focusing on the supply chain, which is the main focus here, and trying to address your question, Mr. Singh. As I said, Brazil has been touching and blending ethanol for 40 years now. We have a very efficient today scheme of logistics, storage, and distribution of ethanol to allow us to today have, in a similar condition to India, I may say, at least in my opinion, we are also a continental country with large dimensions. We also have the ethanol production concentrated in some states, as we can see here in this shot on the left, in the center south and the northeast of the country. And even then, we've been able to guarantee the supply security, stability of the product all over the year and all over the country in order to achieve this ability of delivering both E100 and E27 all over the country. The model we've developed in Brazil is that the blending of ethanol is done in the very last mile of the logistics, concentrated in 80 to 100 points of supply distributed in the country, done by the fuels distribution companies, where they receive this large-scale transportation, the large-scale primary logistics of ethanol done by pipelines, railways, cabotage, or road transport as well. And we take also the benefit in this model to do the very last mile logistics, optimizing ethanol with the other products, the other fuels products that are delivered to stations. So the very last mile logistics is done by putting together in the same voyages, ethanol, gasoline, diesel, that are consumed in these different stations. And as I said, all the stations, they deliver all E100 and E27. There is a choice of the customer to pick one of them. And this is also allowed by our flex fuel cars fleets that have been developed since the beginning of the 2000s in our country, and now represent more than 85–90% of the Brazilian fleet, as you may know. So now the second important thing to say about this scheme really has to do with regulation. So we have several steps in our story in Brazil that turn to be very important to guarantee the security of supply and availability of ethanol. So first we have this 27% blend mandate on ethanol, on gasoline. Second, in the year 2011, we had a very important milestone. There was the launch of a new regulation that obliges all the players in the industry, producers and fuel distribution companies, to hold inventory in the very key moments of the year, in the middle of the in-the-harvest period. So private companies need to comply with a minimum inventory availability. In our case, in March, April, which is the very critical moment before the beginning of a new season of production in our country. So this, for me, was key. And since 2011, we have reached a very strong condition to guarantee this supply in our country. With this minimum inventory requirement, plus also the requirement of registering term agreements between off-takers and producers in a near period at least, to promote and stimulate the additional production of ethanol that would be required if any demand growth comes in the country. So these two components were key in 2011 to take us to another level in terms of guaranteeing supply security of ethanol in our country. After that, of course, more recently, we had also a very important milestone, which is called RenovaBio, that also drives and discusses a lot about the emissions in our country, and certainly will provide a very important scheme for us to upgrade the industry and the ability of Brazil to reduce its emissions and its transport system in the next 10 years. So the regulation around this industry has been played in Brazil a very important role over these years. So talking about the central storage or the protection storage, I truly believe that this has been reached in Brazil through this regulation. So we don't have any other additional inventory that is kept centrally to guarantee supply security. It was a business model that both government and private initiative built together to allow us to reach this level in the last 10 years. So that's the Brazilian experience that allowed us to reach the point we are today. And I personally believe that it has been very successful and key for this development. Last but not least, the very last topic I would like to highlight also is that the development of the industry in Brazil for ethanol allowed companies like ours to keep investing in the ability of taking more and more energy from the sugarcane. So sugarcane is a very efficient plant to convert solar energy into biomass and into energy for transportation. And I would like, quickly to mention that there is, in our reality, a new step being taken, especially with the utilization of the waste of the first generation crushing of the sugarcane, converting the other 2/3 of the energy that is inside the sugarcane on the bagasse and the straw to also produce energy. And I would like to highlight here the E2G technology that we have developed in our country, and that, in a very long story short, allow us to increase up to 50% our ethanol production with the same land, with the same sugarcane availability. And as a consequence, we take more from the sugarcane with the same area that are planted. And as a consequence, you also can deliver solutions that are even better in terms of emissions than what ethanol already represents coming from sugarcane. So I hope that I touched your point, Mr. Singh, and I'm keen to hear also from our other colleagues around the subject, and I'm available for any questions.
Thanks, Mr. Paulo. And after hearing Mr. Paulo, after Mr. Shantanu, I think India is on the right track. In a simple language, I can say that, because almost the transportation and storage, the area of concern where we are worried, it looks like our plans are in a right way. Thank you, Mr. Paulo. And now my next speaker is Ms. Cristiane. She is a technical assistant of Director General, Natural Gas and Biofuel, Government of Brazil. Yesterday, I had a brief chat with Cristiane, and I will still humbly request that the two issues which you believe are not the serious concern, but they are hovering in the mind of the Indian members. One is ethanol being a hygroscopic in nature, absorbs water. So what are the cautions to be taken to avoid a phase separation during the storage and transportation? Somehow it is here. And also the second one, we believe, and I saw in some of the documents circulating, that pure ethanol E100 has an invisible flame and hence could pose a safety threat, though there were some members had a difference of opinion. But hearing from the expert will reassure what is the right position. And second, the major one is to share your long experience concerned and measured in the logistic and storage in Brazil with diversity of transport models. So over to you, Cristiane.
Thank you, Mr. Rajesh. Good morning for those who are in Brazil. Good afternoon for the Indians audience. First, I would like to thank you the invitation and say that I'm glad to be here. I think we are having an opportunity to share a little bit of the ethanol's Brazilian experience. ANP is the regulatory body responsible for the implementation of public policies aimed to the oil, natural gas, and biofuels industries. These are very complex industries. However, when we get into the logistic fields, most of the rules are fixed for both ethanol, biofuels, and fossil fuels. I believe that India has all the conditions to make ethanol a viable energy source for its transport matrix. Its sugarcane production is considerably large. It has a growing installed ethanol production capacity, and mainly its internal demand is quite expressive. The Brazil's history is practically confused with the sugarcane history. The development of the sugarcane industry helped us in the 70s times to overcome an energy crisis that brought great difficulties to the national economy and to the people. After that, even when ethanol almost ceased to be an option for the Brazilian consumer, we kept its participation in the composition of the gasoline, assuring a firm market to the producers. Anhydrous ethanol content in gasoline grew by the time, and in 2003, the flex fuel technology helped the return of the hydrated ethanol, E100. It has been almost 2 decades since flex fuel technology was introduced in the country. Currently, about 90% of our national light fleet is flex. This scenario brought security and comfort to the consumer, who may choose at the time of refueling between gasoline or E100, not only between both, but even the proportion of each, remembering that even if the consumer chooses gasoline, it is E27. So the ethanol is there. The consolidation of ethanol in national transport matrix has required and still requires investment in infrastructure, considering transport and storage. Currently, we use nearly 40,000 kilometers of transport routes divided among roads, railways, waterways, and pipelines. At first, investments in logistics around the country were concentrated on the road system. The flowing of a large part of the production counts on federal and state highways. Much of the ethanol that leaves the mills is transported by road to the distributors and ports. In some cases, we observe short way traveled between the mills and the transshipment terminals, where other modes of transport are available, like pipelines and railways. Our production capacity is concentrated in the center-south region, like Paulo said, account for about 90% of the national production. Thus, it's quite important to develop our infrastructure in storage and more efficient transport models. I believe that the India's government may take advantage of our experience and consider all the transport modes, encouraging private investments according to the characteristics of each region around the country. In fact, all of them have advantages and disadvantages, which need to be considered and evaluated when the authorities will establish the public policies. In Brazil, it was necessary to establish clear rules to encourage investment in the distribution sector. Opening the market up and encouraging competition in the distribution sector was fundamentally important for expanding investment in infrastructure. Besides the public policies, the regulators' work also has a key participation in this environment. Transparency and predictivity are crucial to bring the necessary clearness. Regarding to hygroscopicity, this is not a critical issue for ethanol. We have been working for decades with anhydrous and hydrated ethanol, and this point has never been a problem. So I think this issue shouldn't be a concern. In fact, except isolated and occasional cases, the ethanol's quality has always been high in Brazil. We have a monitoring program in which samples are collected at service stations in order to be analyzed by contracted labs. Historical data shows compliance rates close to 100% for hydrated ethanol. Water and ethanol are perfectly miscible. There is no phase separation. About the flame, this problem of invisible flame is related to methanol. The safety issues for ethanol's storage are the same considered for the gasoline. In general terms, the lesson learned by Brazil involved the stimulation of private activity and guarantee of a legal securities environment for investments mainly in storage capacity and in rail and pipeline transport. I hope I've gotten answered the question. Thank you again.
Thank you, Kishane. I really thank a lot because you have covered all aspects of transportation, and I'm sure our Indian members will take note of all the possible ways of transportation by road, by waterways. I think that's a new idea. I'm not sure whether Indian regulators were thinking or not, and by pipeline. So thanks a lot. And I special thank for clearing the doubts on the two items on this forum. All my colleagues from the auto industry, I'm sure, will put this argument to rest, especially for hygroscopic nature of ethanol, because we used to argue and nobody had any experience or data. And the safety issue came when we were talking about E100, that E100 is actually a E93 because the 7% water has to be put, because 100% ethanol flame is not visible. So it's a safety hazard. So thanks a lot for clarifying and accepting our request. Thank you. Our last speaker is our friend, Mr. K.C. Sharma, one of the very good friend. Sorry. He's a superintendent engineer for transport, MORTH, and I can only say in one line that he has been actually an author of all the regulations since I have been seeing in Ministry of Road Transport. He has a vast experience of MORTH regulations. So though Mr. Sharma, floor is open to you, you can choose the subject, but I would request if you can touch upon that because yesterday we learned that there has been an act passed so that the ethanol can be transported across the states without any restriction for a transportation purpose. So that itself is a very good relief if my understanding is correct. But we would like if you can touch upon what are the other regulation which can be a barrier or a speed breaker for a smooth logistic of ethanol across the country. So over to you, Mr. Sharma.
Thank you, Mr. Singh, for having me here. Good morning to all our Brazilian friends and good evening to everybody in India. Now, as Mr. Singh is aware, because he is one of the doyens of the auto industry, but an expert in his own way. But then our Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, has been instrumental in actually formulating regulations for adoption of ethanol as a transport fuel in India. So in the course of adoption and facilitating the use of ethanol, we have come up with various regulations facilitating the use of ethanol as a auto fuel. As we have notified the procedures for type approval system, for safety methods and safety and precautions, because all of us are very well aware that issues like corrosivity and then the hygroscopic nature and then electrical conductivity and many such issues are there with regard to this fuel. So they need to be attended to properly. Now coming to the, though this transportation of this fuel doesn't follow within the domain of this ministry, but this issue has been discussed while by the NITI Aayog at the time of formulating a roadmap for ethanol blending in India 2020 and 25. At that time, it was said that the Industry Development and Regulation Act 1951, that was amended by the notifications. And as per the notification, the state government can legislate, control and levy taxes and duties on ethanol meant for human consumption, but denatured ethanol, which is not meant for human consumption, can be controlled by the central government. So accordingly, ethanol meant for blending in gasoline is denatured, should be allowed, that was proposed, should be allowed for unrestricted movement and should be free from the various kind of restrictions. However, as I'm given to understand, not all, but a large number of states have adopted this, but there is some room to be covered on this, and the other states will also have to adopt to make this whole ethanol blending program a success. Because we initially started from E5, now we are talking of E20, simultaneously discussions on flex fuel engines and all that has also started. So ethanol blending, both in terms of its logistics and storage, will play a key role in encouraging and or facilitating the use of ethanol for a variety of reasons which has been discussed, economic and otherwise. And that is all I would like to say on this, because my role is quite limited. So with this, I would like to conclude my statement. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Singh. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma. Now, since we are very close to the timing is over, I would just like to go through a one round to have a final piece of advice, because what I've understood from the two Brazilian experts that ethanol being transported in Brazil by all possible, by road, by pipeline, by waterways, and even the refinery blending. And so is there any final word of wisdom in a very short, a few words, if you could give us, first Mr. Paolo, then Ms. Christiani, and then I'll request Mr. Shantanu Gupta, because he knows the Indian story very well, to comment on that. So Mr. Paolo, to you.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. I think we, in my opinion, have lots of similarities in our countries to unlock the challenges of the supply chain, storage and logistics for ethanol. They are similar that we've been facing for so many years in Brazil, and that allowed us to reach at this moment all the means of transportation ready for ethanol and taking places in different regions of the country the way they are, right? So the different means of transportation are applied in different ways in different regions of the country. And I think from what I hear from my colleagues in this panel, it seems to be similar also in the India case. Yeah. And we are very open to discuss together and to learn together from opportunities also to ourselves, Brazilians, in your experience in India.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Paolo. Christiane, please. You are on mute, please. Could you please unmute yourself? Ms. Christiane, please unmute yourself. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
We are available at ANP to strengthen the relations with the India's authorities. I think we may help by sharing our experience and somehow answer questions about issues related to ethanol's regulation. Okay, we are here.
Thank you. And finals to Mr. Shantanu. Your thoughts, whatever you had said, has quite a lot of similarity with what Brazilian actually are doing it. So it looks like you're on the right track. So what is your final line of conclusion, please?
Yeah, Mr. Singh, sorry to jump in, because I'm really excited to see that. Because one thing, but I can assure you that India did first. In Brazil, ethanol, pure ethanol is being transported through pipelines. But India did blended ethanol with 10% transported through the pipelines, the multi-product pipelines. The same pipeline is carrying ATF, the aviation fuel, MS, that is motor gasoline, HSD, SKO, and all these things. So that was the first time in the history, because I attended 2 ethanol seminars, one in Washington and one is Sao Paulo. So both of there, it was how you can do that, because there is a metallurgy issue with the pipelines. But nevertheless, this was done with our strong R&D support. They have done all metallurgy checks for the pipelines. And this has been already given a go-ahead by our management to give a selective basis, because definitely if the ATF is following, then there is a chances of contamination of ATF. So those things are being taken care of. And coming back to the pure ethanol transportation pipeline, there is no issue, absolutely no issue. Rail, which India was not doing, but rail also started a couple of months back. And for the, this coastal movements, India is already doing for potable liquors. There is a good, port in this Paradip, also in the, New Bombay. So it is a requirement. Once the requirement is there, then this movement will also start, because this is portable. This is to get that imported, to handle the imported ethanols. But by and large, which is our plan, that we'll have every state the ethanol production capacity, at least for the grains. And then Brazil scenario is mostly sugar and sugar related. Second generation, we have already started. Our plant in Panipat is going to be commissioned by March 2022. So third generation, another ethanol production producing feedstock we have developed from the refinery of gas. So third generation ethanol plants is also going to come in 2022, maybe in the third quarter. So with that, your worry as a business operator for automobiles, that whether we'll get everywhere the ethanol up to the 10%, 20% blending. I am sure that all the cooking parts, all the arrangement parts in your kitchen is fully geared to take care of that, so that the final product is delivered to you at any point of time, at any corner in this country. So that's
Thank you so much for so much of an assurance, because I'm sure my all automobile colleagues now will start planning modification of the engines, which they were hesitant, because that is the only question which was hovering on their mind, looking at the past experience, because reaching up to E10 has taken a long time.
10 years.
And as you yourself have shown, it has gone 5% to 0.6%. So we were not sure of it. So now it is a lot of assurance. So thanks a lot. I think it has been a wonderful panel, very informative, and at least 2 doubts got cleared in the mind of all the Indian friends from now onward. And Carolina, is there any question from the audience?
I think since the time we won't be able to.
You won't be able to take it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
So once again, I thank the speakers for very open discussion and very valuable suggestions, and also giving a reassurance that what India is doing is already being done. So we are doing whatever we are doing is absolutely in the safe hands. So over to Carolina.
Thank you very much, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. On behalf of all Ethanol partners, I'd like to express our gratitude for all the speakers today and all of our audience of panel 4. We will so continue with the concluding panel. Please keep tuned.
routes will take us into the new age of mobility. Fuels with a more efficient life cycle are becoming more prominent. And in the quest to reduce emissions, ethanol can achieve sustainable mobility. Ethanol is the fuel of the present and of the future. Of the present, because the biofuel, pure or blended with gasoline, reduces gas emissions that contribute to climate change. Of the future, because with the development of new technologies, ethanol will be the energy generator for hybrid or fuel cell cars. With the use of ethanol, it is possible to neutralise emissions with decarbonisation credits, the CBIOs. Green bonds generated from more efficient biofuel producers. Renewably sourced products with environmental and social protection. Products that respect life. This is what we offer the world.
We are now heading to the end of our event. The next panel, Building the Steps Together, will take a forward-looking approach to enhance Brazil-India cooperation on ethanol. The panelists have already participated in some of the previous sessions, and so they have a very good idea of the main points discussed during the event. They are Mr. Evandro Gussi, President of Brazilian Sugarcane Industry Association, UNICA, Mr. Prashant Banerjee, Executive Director of Society of Indian Automotive Manufacturers, SIAM, and Mr. Flávio Castellari, Executive Director of Brazilian Ethanol Cluster, APLA. This concluding panel will be moderated by Mr. Renato Godinho, Head of Energy Promotion Division, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Government of Brazil, and former chairperson of the BioFuture platform. Mr. Godinho, please take the floor.
Tá mudo. Godinho, está mudo. Mute. Still mute. Something happened with your microphone.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes, so I wasn't on mute, but maybe something with my microphone. Good thing that it has been solved. So I was saying good evening to Roberta and the other colleagues in India. Good morning to the friends in Brazil. This has been an excellent conference, and I'm very pleased to be here moderating the final panel, where we get to conclude the conference and think about what would be the next steps. So this event showed, and I think we're here because mainly the vision set out by Prime Minister Modi for increasing the use of ethanol throughout the Indian country. It's a very, very ambitious vision, and one that we in Brazil fully agree with, being the fact that we have trodden this path before means that we are extremely heartened by the decision of the friends in India. And this has meant, this has truly improved the cooperation between Brazil and India since then. So the path of this dialogue and cooperation on biofuels and ethanol has been long. So we have been very successfully conducting lots of initiatives and dialogues. We have signed a memorandum of understanding and cooperation on these topics, of which I would say this conference is a part already of implementing that conference, the second edition of Ethanol Talks, having held also Ethanol Talks the previous year with all the partners. So I thank so much dearly all the partners involved in Brazil and India for realizing and organizing these important issues. So where we can take this cooperation further. So we have seen how a challenge it is to scale up ethanol, especially at that fast clip proposed by the vision of Prime Minister Modi. So there are issues in ethanol production. There are challenges to solve in distribution and logistics, as we have seen. There are aspects to solve in preparing the vehicles. There are aspects involved in designing good public policies and regulations to make that happen. And in Brazil, of course, in a different context, in a different periods, have been through these challenges. And this conversation, learning from India and also hoping that India would also learn from us, would take our countries even further in this path for decarbonization using biofuels and ethanol. So I wanted to you have heard that our Minister of Energy, Bento Albuquerque, in his intervention yesterday, invited a high-level mission to Brazil next year. So we could help here in discussing these aspects to try to fill up the substance of this visit. So what would be the most important points and challenges remaining that this dialogue of Brazil and India can help with? So what should be the focus of that visit and the following visit that our minister also alluded to from Brazil to India? What could be the focus of those? What could be the most important issues that the delegates would touch at? And I would like to start with the president of the Brazilian Sugarcane Industry Association, UNICA, Mr. Evandro Gussi, who was also, as a politician, a key driver of recent developments, important developments in biofuels policies in Brazil. So, Mr. Gussi, coming from the panel that you also attended on public policies, I wanted to focus my question on this aspect. So you also know India very well. So you have been to India several times. And of course, you know the Brazilian public policy experience very well as well in Brazil. So with all the recent developments and changes in India's policy that we have heard several times these days, made this big push in recent years to increase the ethanol blending level throughout the country. With all those developments, what do you think that still India could pay attention to in the development of their public policy? So are there other fronts to look at? What would be the important aspects, or in policy design, or in stability and others? So, and your take from the panel you were in.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you again, the partnership with the Foreign Affairs Ministry in your person, Renato Godinho, my dear friend, and also in the person of Ambassador André Corrêa do Lago, and now with us, Roberta Lima from Embassy of Brazil in Delhi. My dear friend, Flávio Castellari, it's an honor and pleasure for me to be join with you here, and also Mr. Banerjee, my dear friend. I hope to see you again in January. Well, I think that first of all, we have to understand the political framework of India. As a cabinet government, as you have there, these become the things faster, because the prime minister has naturally, more than this, he is a fruit of majority in the parliament. And with this, we are able to be faster than in our case, or Latin American countries, where we need to convince the parliament every time to achieve some solutions. We should understand this better in Brazil, how this make the things get better and get faster in politics. Because this and the political will, we are seeing the growth of political background of ethanol in India. It's wonderful. 2 years ago, we saw almost nothing about ethanol in India, and now we are seeing India wanting to be one of the most important players in ethanol world. I'd like to remark the role of our friend here in Brazil, Ambassador Suresh. Suresh is the ambassador of India in Brazil, and he is working hard for ethanol. He traveled a lot. He understood everything about our industry and helped the Indian government also understanding the opportunities for that. Then we have, in my opinion, the key points in political framework to have this pushing that we are seeing there. And this gives me the I'm sure, I'd say that I am sure that we will have success in this project in India. We have challenges, it's natural. We know this very, very well in Brazil. I would say if we wouldn't have more challenges and issues in Brazil, Única wouldn't be necessary here. If Única until is necessary here, because we have challenges, we have issues. This is the natural, the natural of human relationships. This is natural, but I'm very, very hopeful within the program. I think that we have some steps for the future. First, we need to see the maturation of the ethanol program in India for the next years, especially with E20. Flex fuel engines in India will be great because you put for the future, you plan for the future. One issue, how could I say, you avoid the issue for the future, because with the E20 you don't have a problem with the old cars, but for the future it's wonderful to have a solution like a flex fuel vehicles in which you don't have a problem with any kind of blend, any kind of mix between ethanol and petrol, first of all. Then to mature the supply with mills and distillers, to plant, as we are here about the India program in flex fuel engines is wonderful, and we are right here to help in this also. I know that Indian automotive industry is very, very huge, with a very huge experience in R&D, but we could share with our friends from automotive industry here in Brazil, Pablo DC from Volkswagen, and Rafael Chang from Toyota, and other brands also. I know that they are ready to help and to share in this process in India. The third point, I think that we would join together in R&D about the fuel cell solutions, because we know that the growth of efficiency that we have with electrical vehicles, with electrical engines, but we know what it means about infrastructure and more. We have one magazine, economic magazine, Isto é Dinheiro, in Brazil, and we will translate this new here in Brazil from Volvo, saying about the right evaluation of life cycle in terms of electrification. If you don't have a clean metrics of electricity, you have nothing. Volvo is saying that. It isn't the ethanol industry or anyone, but Volvo is saying this. But fuel cell with ethanol solve all the problems. You don't have to change the infrastructure. You don't have to think about the clean source of electricity. Of course, we have to think about this for other issues. But if you have a fuel cell solution, you don't have to think about this for the sustainable mobility. And as we know, India has a wonderful and huge universities and R&D centers for technology and engineering. Then we think that we have to think in join together Brazilian universities, Indian universities, Indian automotive industry, Brazilian automotive industry. This is my third point. I think that we have to give this next step, thinking for the future. Of course, we have issues and challenges for now, but besides then, we have to think for the future, for the next 10 years. And fuel cell research and development is a key point in my opinion. And fourth point that I would have, looking at for the future in a strategical view, is to help other countries to grow, to increase and implement ethanol supply. If you understand that ethanol is a part of the solution for sustainable mobility, if you understand that we will need a lot of countries using ethanol, we will need to have more countries producing ethanol. As you know, in India, our speech, the speech of UNICA, wasn't ethanol is good, please buy our ethanol. I don't believe in this speech. And my friends in India know this very, very well. I don't believe ethanol is good, please buy our ethanol. I believe in ethanol is good, produce yourself your own ethanol. This is our speech. This is working in India, and this must work in Africa, in other countries in Asia. I believe in that. And I think that India and Brazil is able now to share this experience with other countries. And I think that we could design next steps in supply side, to understand where in Africa, in Asia, we could plant these seeds about the ethanol. Again, I am seeing, I'm trying to see 10 years in forward. Okay, in 10 years forward, we will need ethanol as a part of the solution. We will have a lot of countries using ethanol in engine in combustion engines, in hybrid solutions, and fuel cell solutions. For that, we will need to design and to design a strategic view to have flex fuel vehicles, hybrid solutions with flex fuel engines, fuel cell solutions in the side of consumption. And we have to work in R&D process for that. In the other side, if we will have a consumption, we must have the supply and the suppliers for that. Brazil can increase its production of ethanol production. United States may be the same. India will do the same, but this won't be enough. And to finish, I say this because when we see the oil crisis in 1973, the most important issue was the geographical concentration of oil supply. We had a global demand for oil, but we have a local production for oil. And this is very, very bad. No one wants, again, oil crisis like we have in 1973. And no one wants more, for example, Russian gas. Nothing against Russian gas. This isn't a problem for us in Brazil, but no one wants, again, only 1, 2, 3 suppliers of energetic source. Then we have, in my opinion, to address these 4 points. First, to make mature the Indian program in Brazil and here in India and in Brazil, because we have a Fuel for Future program in Brazil. We have to give the signs for the future in Brazil. We have to make mature the ethanol program in India. Second, to think in flex fuel engines, in my opinion, for the short term, to work together in R&D about flex fuel, fuel cell solutions for the future. And fourth, and the last one, to think about new suppliers. This is good for everyone. Someone could ask me, but wow, you are helping to build a market and you want more suppliers? Yes, without more suppliers, we won't have a true market about energy. This is clear for me, and this is our message. And India and Brazil joined together is the best thing that we could have. Two giants. India has more than 1 billion people with a huge and growing economy. Brazil has the largest experience in usage in biofuels. Together, we are wonderful partners. And again, thank you for everyone that are working in this panel. And besides our wonderful team in Brazilian Embassy and here in Brazil, Renato Godinho is one of my leaders. He knows this. And Flavio Castellari and Cian with Bernardine. I have to thank Mr. Suresh again. I have never seen in so much capacity of work that you are having here. Thank you.
Thank you, Evandro, for this vision. This is a very comprehensive vision, and you looked at the current issues, but also at the the future, where Brazil is also trying to learn and see what steps to take, such as, for instance, fuel cell technology, and the way of how Brazil and India, at this time, we are dialoguing about our domestic issues, but soon they should reinforce this dialogue about how to take that experience to other countries as well. So Brazil and India are already key members of the BioFuture platform, which is trying to do just that for the bioeconomy in general. And a stronger push in the specific ethanol issues from Brazil and India to Africa and to many other countries where we have an international presence and they have potential. It's a very good point that you made. As we used to say in Brazil, so the smart soccer player, he's not running to where the ball is currently, but he would expect where the ball will be a few seconds later on, and is already running towards that direction. So I believe this is a really important point. And as you mentioned, the fuel cell and vehicle technologies, this brings me also to the next speaker, the Executive Director of the Society of Indian Automotive Manufacturers, Mr. Prashant K. Banerjee, and our key partner for this conference as well. So, well, thank you again for participation and the heavy involvement of CIAN in making this conference happen. We have seen throughout the whole event that not by coincidence, the issue of vehicles, preparation of vehicles is perhaps the topic that raised the most interest from the audience, from the panelists throughout the event. So this is squarely in your side, the challenge of responding to this need of that has many aspects. So speaking just about the present right now, so there is around the corner the matter of achieving E20 compliance and the matter of starting a new fleet with flex fuel vehicles. So I'd like you to concentrate on that. What do you think are the biggest challenges, and what could be the focus of Brazil-India cooperation? Our next steps, these visits that we are planning for next year from India to Brazil and to India, and especially also in the connecting to the policy side. So we have heard that in Brazil, for instance, there were many occasions where Brazil developed a tax incentive, to give an example, for flex fuel vehicles. There could be incentives or government programs to help accelerate the conversion to E20 on the current fleet as well, two-wheelers, four-wheelers. So do you think these instruments or other actions, there could be more dialogue or more work on this policy aspect? There is also the technical aspect, which I'm sure the automotive companies already understand and can surely cooperate on as well. And if there is also need to delve into these technical aspects as well, Brazil is ready to do so. But over to you for your views, Mr. Banerjee.
Thank you. Good morning, my fellow panelists from Brazil, and very good evening to friends in India. I think Society of Indian Automobile Manufacturers are very proud and privileged. When last 2020 beginning, Evandro Gussi led the delegation and we met in the SIAM office. We believed that the right partner is with us, and what a wonderful 2 days exchange of views happened against the very dedicated 4 panels. In India, we believe that the nature and we are built with 5 elements. 5 elements: land, air, water, sky, and land, water, air, sky. And when the blue sky, bring back my blue sky was the theme created by Unica. We were very excited that ethanol finds a place. The fire is the fifth element which we believe. And that is the reason why you will find that in Glasgow announcement, 5 elixir of life concept we follow in India. So the 5-point initiative, our visionary Prime Minister, Mr. Modi announced. So in our context, in ethanol also, we have 5 principles of progression, 5 principles of cooperation. And in our last meeting also, we stated that the first area of cooperation is sustainable mobility goals related policy prescriptions. We know that we need the climate change related targets met. We want our energy security related priorities met. We want our pollution mitigation of cities managed well. And you know that energy management is not a simple issue. It is related with the geographical positioning of the country, its climatic conditions, its mobility needs, its population's affordability. Therefore, we would be very happy to have a very clear demarcated area of cooperation on policy. And rightly, the panel discussion was very dedicated to public policy discourse related to mobility, the panel 1. So therefore, we are very happy that on the policy front, we have to have a greater cooperation. The next cooperation we see is related to standardization, regulation making, and related challenges of emission cycles, because we recognize that Brazilian emission cycles are not BS6 cycle, they are different cycles. So therefore, bringing vehicles from there to India, we need to have a more understanding of performance of the vehicle in those cycles. The third area, which is very important, is the technology, R&D. As my friend Evandro Gussi rightly mentioned, that we need to move towards fuel cell technology also. We need to also work on more detail how to work with different fuel combinations. We know that in India, we don't have as much ethanol as Brazil has. So should we have our flex fuel vehicle limited to E20 to E85 range, or we should have from E20 to E100 range? So those are the issues of discussion we must have. So therefore, it's very important that partnership with Brazil would bring a great deal of learning for us. The item number 4, which is very important for us, is related to awareness creation, education, because today our dealers are confused. The fuel dealers are confused. What will happen if the water goes in the tank? The customer is confused. So I'm sure that 100 years of Brazil experience, you must have understood very well how to handle customer sentiment, how to handle dealer sentiment. So those are the areas of cooperation we would like to have, where we will talk about the mass movement in terms of acceptability of the ethanol higher blends in our gasoline. So that's where the Brazilian learning will help us in a big way. The last, fifth and important area for us is that we need to have some kind of continuous exchange of information in the form of center of excellence. It could be the opportunities like we are planning to visit next year to Brazil. We would also like to invite that Auto Expo gives a bigger platform for many people to visit. So when we have a next year Auto Expo, we would be very happy that last time the Unica had a stall, we would have a bigger presence for ethanol dedicated stalls where all the industry players, all the stakeholders will be able to join us. So in summary, I would like to say that there could be 5 areas of cooperation where we can build upon, because this relationship should not stop in 5 or 10 years. It's a relationship for existence of mankind for long period of time. And it is very well understood that for sustainable growth, for sustainable earth, renewable energy source like ethanol is finding a consistent place. It's a matter of time. How do we harness this for the benefit of mankind? So I'm so proud, privileged that SIAM has been given this opportunity to be partner with stakeholders of Brazil, and Unica has been supporting us in a big way under the aegis of the Embassy of Brazil in New Delhi, India, and with the help of Foreign Affairs Ministry, Brazil. Government of India is having a very clear vision. The present government is very visionary and very, very determined to see what is good for India. And our Indian automobile industry is committed to stand by, aligned and commit itself. What is good for India, good for society, good for global requirements, and ethanol is one of the wonderful solution for our challenge of energy security, employment generation, farmers income increase, and also the local pollution mitigation. So with this, I would like to stop here and look forward to build upon the relationship and the exchange of information against these 5 important pillars of cooperation, which in India we call it Panchamrit. That means 5 points of elixir, which will actually take us forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Banerjee, for providing us with this vision. You gave us the entire roadmap. So thank you so much for acceding to my question in such a complete way. As you said, in India, this 5-part, I would say, if I took good notice, policies, standards, regulations, the second part. So technology, R&D, the issues related to the ethanol blending, so and the aspects in the distribution using E25 or E100, the matter of public education and education of the supply chain actors, and finally the continuous exchange that would be represented over all these areas. This makes me dream, Mr. Banerjee, of having a center of excellence, an institute that could be fixed in India or in Brazil or in both countries. Brazil, India, Center of Learning and Excellence on ethanol. This is a call for the industry stakeholders and governments that are hearing. We can dream, no? There will be definitely resources to be managed, but I think, as you said, this is something that is going to last for the foreseeable future. It will become ever more important, also, as Evandro Gussi said, for the whole energy transition. So why not justify such an effort? So let's see if the conversations next year could take us more deeply to those 5 areas as well. And you mentioned at the end of your speech as well how ethanol is a solution to many things. So not just to moving vehicles in a cleaner way. And I would like to turn to the production side, where this is clearly highlighted, and call upon the executive director of the Brazilian ethanol cluster, APLA, Mr. Flavio Castellari, a good friend, that has knowledge of the whole supply chain for ethanol production in Brazil and represents the supply chain, actually also having knowledge of the challenges of ethanol production in many, many countries around the world. So here's someone who is not afraid of traveling to many places. And Flavio Castellari, my questions to you on production go back again to that perception that ethanol is a solution to many things. So in Brazil, I think this is an aspect that this event has not touched upon because there is only so much time. But in Brazil, the ethanol production is also something that ethanol and sugar production produces a lot of bioelectricity. So it is a very, very important supplier of power to our country. So people outside Brazil are usually surprised when they know how much actually energy is supplied. So now it's over 12% of the energy mix and surpassing the energy provided by coal and also by natural gas in Brazil. So it is a very important component and is one of the aspects of having an efficient, modernized production of ethanol in the distilleries. If you have a more efficient conversion, efficient fermentation, efficient distillation, you can have more energy to supply to the grid using the same biomass. So this is something that would be useful also to be more widely understood. And I would like to turn to you. How can production help the supply? So we have discussed a lot from the demand side, and new assurances that the fleet will be ready, the distribution, logistics, but in the production side, how to best ensure that the supply is there in the more efficient way possible.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Renato. Thank you, everyone. I want to thank the Brazilian government to allow us to be part of this organization in name of the Ambassador Andrea Correa do Lago. I want to thank you, Mr. Banerjee, to allow us to be part of this organization in name of Cian and Unica, my good friend Evandro Bussi. Yes, be the last one to speak is not really easy after two really good speakers. But as you say, Renato, I was in the last 13 years traveling around the world, trying to promote and show the Brazilian know-how and the key words that I think the delegation that will visit Brazil next year from India should look very close is diversification and flexibility. I think these two words is very important, is the key of the success of the Brazilian bioenergy industry. Second, as you say, we need extracted from sugarcane the maximum potential. So if you look at 1 ton of sugarcane have more energy than 1 barrel of oil. So it's very important to use all this energy contained that we have in the sugarcane. We did some studies in Brazil and we divided this energy in 3 parts. The first one is this juice, it's easy to see. Second one is the bagasse, and the third one is the straw. And each part of the sugarcane, you have the same amount of energy contained. So it's very important to the countries starting not using just the juice, but to look at Brazil and see how we're using all the potential of the sugarcane, as you say, producing electricity with bagasse, biogas, using the filter cake, the vinhaça, and other residues of the sugarcane production to produce the biogas, that you can provide electricity, you can provide fuel for the trucks, tractors, and cars. So it's very important to India to, when you visit to Brazil, take a very close look what our sugar mills are doing in Brazil and how they are using this potential of the sugarcane, because it's amazing crop that we have in our hands. And together with India, we are both the two big largest of sugarcane producers in the world. And we need keep producing sugar, but we need look at the other options that we have and technologies available that we have in Brazil already tested. Like if you look at Raízen right now, they have a 2G ethanol production for more than 7 years. So it's very well tested in large quantity. So they are exporting these products to premium markets. So we need to look at very close that. We have a very good technology for biogas, so we need to export that. So I think this this basket of a solution that we can offer from Brazil, the know-how, will be the key for the Indian program, to extract and push the efficiency of the plants, of the sugar mills, and use and bring more sustainability for the sugar industry in India. It's very good when you see India come enjoy a really strong program to use biofuels. For us in Brazil, like Mr. Evandro said, it's very good to be together with India, showing the rest of the world the potential that we have in the sugarcane and the biofuels. It's very important that. It's very important that India and Brazil together can be a huge supplier of bioenergy, not just for our countries, but we can export this kind of bioenergy, to countries that cannot produce this kind of bioenergy. If you look at, we have around 100 countries in the world that can produce sugarcane. So it's like a green Middle East, we can deliver this kind of bioenergy for our countries, like 100 countries that have the sugarcane, and we can export it to other countries that cannot produce this kind of bioenergy. So this is a very good opportunity, and have India join this kind of program together with Brazil. It's very important to deliver that message, like Mr. Evandro say, Mr. Renato say, to the rest of the world, Asia, Latin America, and in Africa. So would be a pleasure to participate and to organize together this event and share a little bit our point of view, and expecting helping the Indian delegation when visit to Brazil to show a little bit the technology that we can offer, prove it, showing directly in our sugar mills, and try to join together and spread these biofuels around the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Flavio, for calling attention to that very important aspect of how to get the most from sugarcane production. So sugarcane is this magic crop that this has been explained throughout the conference, how it is one of the most efficient crops in converting sunlight into biomass. And to be frank, hearing some of the discussions in India in several occasions on the supply side, so I see, and this is very important, how India is looking at scaling up the production from different crops as well to complement sugarcane production. But I do believe that there is much more that perhaps is not being so discussed in how to take sugarcane as far as it can be. And there are a number of ways to do that. So converting more of the recoverable sugar into ethanol, building more efficient distilleries, extracting clean energy from the biomass, using the vinhas, starting to use biogas. So in Brazil, those are more recent learnings that we are still taking further. So the presentation from Raízen here today at the last slide, they discussed this, and not every sugarcane plant, ethanol plant in Brazil is so well equipped. to make this best use of the available biomass. We are getting there, and it would be, I do believe, very beneficial to India if they also took a harder look on the distillery sector and say how to take it farther and get more from the same biomass. So I think we would like to exchange questions with the audience, but unfortunately we are already ahead of time. So I'd like to thank you all for the contributions. I believe from the government side, I'd like to thank all the partners, thank the Embassy of Brazil in Delhi, SIAM, APLA, UNICA for this important panel. And I think we have our work cut for us in designing the next steps for this cooperation. So stay all tuned for those next steps. And with that, I thank you. I conclude this panel and turn over to Ms. Roberta for her words, and then later for the final vote of thanks.
Yes, can you hear me? Yes, now. So I thank the chairperson, Mr. Godinho, the speakers, and the audience that attended this last panel. And now that we started to build the next steps together, I invite Mr. Prashant Banerjee, Executive Director of SIAM, to deliver the final words on behalf of the organizers.
Thank you, Roberta. The government is as a facilitator. The government of Brazil, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Embassy of Brazil in New Delhi displayed extraordinary leadership and helped us cement this excellent dialogue. Evandro Gussi has already given a certificate saying that it's one of the benchmark in the international relations. So thank you, Mr. Gussi, for acknowledging this fact openly, that this ethanol talk and the relationship between India and Brazil, taking this important subject of ethanol in transportation industry forward in a meaningful way. We are extremely delighted that the 4 panels created meticulously, taking into account each important verticals of policy, technology, logistics, and of course the discourse on energy security. The powerful inaugural session, attended by none other than the honorable ministers from both the countries and led by His Excellency Ambassador of Brazil in India, in presence of UNICA President Evandro Gussi, was testimony of the seriousness and in the right earnest that movement is happening. So I'm looking forward, on behalf of SIAM Auto Industry, we will have a modular discussion with other stakeholders. Abraciclo is the next one with whom we are anyway meeting one-to-one dialogue. So Sergio is already in touch with us. So this ethanol dialogue is going to take place in a smaller way, and the next ethanol talk will happen maybe in physical form, hopefully in Brazil, with the help of UNICA and Government of Brazil and other stakeholders present here, APLAC and other associations. So once again, I would like to profusely thank everyone for creating such a wonderful exchange of dialogue under Ethanol Talk 2, and look forward a cementing relationship not only on the area of bioenergy as a whole, but higher blends of ethanol usage in transportation sector as a major push from our side. India is a big country, looking forward a energy security in the form of ethanol being one of the candidates. So once again, I would like to thank all the stakeholders, organizers, and specifically to mention UNICA, APLAC, and Bioenergy Association, as well as the Sugarcane Producing Industry Association of Brazil, under the aegis of Minister of External Affairs, Brazil, as well as the Embassy of Brazil. So once again, thank you very much. And we close the program here. So I hand over to Roberta, over to you for final words.
I thank everyone, and let's meet again for the third Ethanol Talks sometime in the near future.